Sixth grade, happy Thursday. Science, lesson 3. Lesson 1, asexual reproduction. One parent, identical DNA. Lesson 2, how we get those traits as we talk about the DNA copying itself because it comes with 4 base pairs and A always goes with T and C always goes with G, and so we can make those identical copies. Today we're moving on to sexual reproduction, guys, which is going to be reproduction with 2 parents, what happens in the animal kingdom or with humans as we work our way through that. You hopefully have your notes sitting on your desk. Here we go. It says, what is sexual reproduction? During sexual reproduction, organisms get genes from 2 different parents. When that happens, the organism shares some traits from each parent. So we're going to get started with this lesson today as we get talking about these parents, and then we'll talk about a little bit more of the science behind it so we can understand how it works. Here we go. You know that asexual reproduction results in 2 cells that have the same DNA as the parent cell. Have you ever seen a mother cat and her kittens? You probably noticed that the kittens didn't look exactly like its mother. That's because cats produce offspring by sexual reproduction, or production by 2 parents. The kitten gets half its DNA from one parent and half from the other. How does this work? So half the DNA comes from mom and half the DNA comes from dad. Living things that reproduce sexually have special cells called sex cells. The sex cells of a female is called an egg cell, number 2, and the sex cell from a male is called a sperm cell, also number 2. Sex cells have only half as many chromosomes, number 3 in your notes, as other cells in the organism's body. For example, the body cells of a house cat that we're talking about have 38 chromosomes, but the cat's sex cells only have 19. I switched to humans here, and humans, we learned yesterday, have 46. So mom's going to give 23, dad's going to give 23, and 23 plus 23 gives you a total of 46. So half your genes come from your dad, half your genes come from your mom. Now that doesn't mean you're going to look, half of you looks like mom and half of you looks like dad. We'll talk about that in the next lesson on why some genes dominate over them, where you might get eye color, height, all kinds of different things that all come from one of your parents. But you still have the same number of chromosomes coming from each one of those. Okay? Sex cells form in a process called meiosis. Boom, number 4. In meiosis, one cell divides into 4 new cells. Each new cell has only half the number of chromosomes as a parent cell. Study the diagram on the next page to see how this happens. So I'm going to walk you through the next page. That's your A through H. So before meiosis begins, the parent cell makes copies of its chromosomes. Guys, that's what you did yesterday. You saw how DNA copied itself. So that happens in each and every chromosome. So humans have 46. They just copied itself, so they doubled. That's why I wrote chromosomes copy went from 46 to 92. So this one cell right now is holding 92 chromosomes. Then what happens? The membrane around the nucleus disappears, and the twin chromosomes, you can actually see those with a microscope. Good. Now 3. Pairs of the twin chromosomes line up the middle and pull apart. The pairs move apart. Now we're still inside the same cell, guys, so the cell still has the 92 chromosomes. They're just on each side, 46 over here and 46 over here. Now number 4, a membrane forms around each group of chromosomes, still kind of touching here, so we still say it's still one cell, and then boom, you get 5. The cell divides into 2. So now you have one cell here and one cell here. They each have so that's why I wrote cell divides. We went from 92 down to 46. So we double the 92, we pull apart, we just split apart. We're each at 46 like a human should be. Then we repeat ourselves. Twin chromosomes line up again in the middle of the cell, they split, and the single chromosomes move to opposite sides. So the same thing that happened up here just happened again. Boom, boom. Membranes form around. 7 looks a lot like what is happening right here. And then 8, the cell divides again. 8 looks a lot like 5, and we just split again. And that's why I wrote down we just split, so 46 goes to 23. We start up here, one cell. We end up down here, 1, 2, 3, 4 cells. That's where we got that note. One cell divides into 4 cells. okay? So your one blank you need to fill in, chromosomes line up and then they move apart. So this what happens is when we take it and we get through the process of meiosis. Do not confuse that with mitosis, that has a T in it. We did that with asexual reproduction and in chapter 2, guys. All right? Let's see if I can scroll quickly here. Move that up. Good. Let's get this last paragraph. During sexual reproduction, the male cell and the female cell join together in a process that's called fertilization. Number 5 up here. During fertilization, an egg cell and a sperm cell unite. So this is a picture of blue egg trying to get one sperm in there. All these little white guys are sperms. One's going to get in there. They're going to unite. That's called fertilization, and the one cell is called a zygote. It is the first cell of a new organism. That's number 6. It's called a zygote. I don't, personally, when we're talking about humans, I wish we would call it a child. As soon as this happens, you have a living being. I know it looks microscopic like one cell, but God tells us that's human, right? Each sex cell then has half of the usual number of chromosomes. The new organism receives a complete set. So half comes from mom, half comes from dad. That new cell, that zygote, has 46 chromosomes. The zygote then divides through mitosis. One cell splits to 2 from chapter 2. 2 splits to 4, 4 to 8, and boom. Mitosis is copying those things and off they go, and that's going to keep happening until we have a fully adult body, okay? So that was number 7. There was no blanks to fill in how they go through that with it, okay? Continuing on, let's see what it looks like in flower or with plants. So we're over here, number 8. It says red, blue, yellow, pink. These are just a few of the many colors that flowers come in. They come in a seemingly endless variety of shapes and sizes too. Why do flowers have so much variety? A flower is an adaptation that allows a plant to reproduce sexually. In flowering plant, fertilization takes place within the flower. That's number 8. The male sex cells in flowering plants are in pollen. That's number 9. The powdery substance found in many flowers. Pollen is produced by the flower's stamen. The female egg is produced at the bottom of the female part of the flower, which is called the pistil. That's number 10. For a flowering plant to reproduce, pollen must get from the stamen to a pistil. This process is called pollination. Number 11, but there's no fill in the blank. Look at the diagram to see how pollen gets from the top of the pistil to the egg of the flower. Okay, we'll go through that in a second. A plant's flower is adapted for the way that pollination occurs. For example, some plants depend on insects to transfer pollen from the stamen to the pistil. That would be mainly bees, guys. Bees are just fantastic at keeping this world going. I know we don't like them because they sting us, but if you ever see bees, they're always going from flower to flower. They're always covered with pollen, and as they go from flower to flower, that pollen goes from the male part to the female part to reproduce the next generation. Now, second thing that insects have to do is get from pollen to stamen. They can either do this in the same plant or in a different plant. So some bees will go from flower to flower to flower, and that will be called cross-pollination. Or it can go in the same flower, and it can just knock the pollen that we need into the pistil, and it'll be self-pollination, okay? These kind of plants have flower adaptations that attract insects. What does it? The adaptation might be brightly colored petals or a strong fragrance that appeals to insects. When an insect visits a plant, pollen can rub off on the insect and be carried to other flowers. Hummingbirds especially and mammals can carry pollen. In other words, animals can do that as well, guys, simply sometimes just by walking past them and bumping them. Plants that depend on wind, water, your other blank for number 12, and other sources that carry pollen would have different flower adaptations. So guys, you think about dandelions, start yellow, then they dry out and they get that feathery white. The wind can carry those off. The rain can knock it down. Or little kids like to pick them and blow the little seeds all over the place. Parents don't like that because they know they're spreading dandelions, cross-pollinating those things, guys, to make them produce. Okay, here's how pollination works. The pollen lands on the pistil. So you can see, guys, stamen is where the pollen is produced. It's one part of the flower. The pistil is another part of the same flower. So these two can just get in contact with each other through a bug, the wind, water, animals, or a bug can get here and get pollen on it and then fly to a different flower and hit its pistil. But pollen needs to get to the pistil. 2. Then the pollen grains grow pollen tubes. So you're going to see this right here, guys. The pollen gland here, it grows this pollen tube and works its way down in here into the ovary. Okay, so you see these pictures getting blown up here. Okay, the sperm cell then travels down this pollen tube. 3, each ovule within the ovary contains an egg cell, so there's an egg in here. The sperm reaches the egg cell and fertilization occurs. So I wrote that in there for you guys. You're going to want this. It's a question on one of your tests. In what part of the flower does fertilization occur? Boom. Number 4, the fertilized egg becomes an embryo, and it'll form into a seed. Okay, the next generation moves on. So God in His wisdom, plants and animals reproduce. We're going to pause there for today. We'll pick up fertilization in animals starting next week. So for today, guys, Thursday here, they're only halfway through it, so there's no other worksheet. Hopefully you got your blanks filled in as you work through the video with me, and you're set, ready to go. The tragedy is next week we're going to get the second half of this lesson, and a lot of the questions will come from what we talked about today, and you won't have the notes. You might have to go back and use your book, or even better, your fantastic brain that has all this stuff memorized. Blessings on your day.